Girls, what is the most awkward thing a guy has ever said to you? Not a girl, but one time I walked up to one and tried to say hi but farted instead. Before I could say anything, I just turned around and left. I mean, you're not really pretty enough to date, but if you wanna have sex, I'm down. Not only did I have a boyfriend, but he came up to me at a bar that I was at with my boyfriend. Walking through the woods with a neighborhood boy when we were about 14. Suddenly he smiled at me and said, "You know, I could abuse you right now." Then grabbed me, laughed, and kept walking. Never went anywhere alone with him again. In high school I had been talking to this guy from one of my classes, and he has been telling me about his depression and how he prefers to be a loner and whatnot. And then all of a sudden he tells me he's had dreams about shooting up the school. So of course, 14-year-old me is just like, well, you wouldn't shoot me though, right? Because we're friends. And he says, honestly, I'd probably shoot you first. I always take my anger out on the people I care about the most. I avoided him at all costs after that. Edit. I didn't report him to the school, though I debated it for a long time. Our graduating class was 2014 and he never actually shot up the school. My mom didn't hold me enough when I was a baby. That's probably why I fell in love with you so quickly. Said on a first date. This is less of a said and more of a did. I was standing in line at my college cafeteria checkout, waiting until it was my turn to pay. The guy in front of me in line looks to be purchasing only a Snickers ice cream bar. He makes eye contact with me and smiles slyly. From there he raises an eyebrow, lightly tosses his Snickers in the air so that it flips twice, catches it, and gives me a knowing wink. This was the end of the interaction. To this day I have no idea what that display was about or how I was supposed to feel. Eater. To all those wondering what makes this awkward, I think the main factor for me was the timing of everything. We still had to wait in line for 2-3 minutes after the Snickers flip interaction. He was pretty jittery post flip, maybe from the excitement of a successful Snickers toss. On a very awkward date, he asked me, "So, at what age did you start wearing tampons?" Edit. I didn't realize this blew the duck up, but just because I got gold, I started using tampons at the age of 12. Also, thanks for gold. Semicolon. For work I had to live for a couple months in a house with 3 guys I didn't know. They all had girlfriends back home. During one of the first nights when we were all still getting to know each other, we stayed up late drinking and chatting. No hint of sexual tension or flirtation. Then 2 went to bed and I continued talking to the third as we were having a conversation. I am mid-sentence when he interrupts me and says, "So I'm not going to cheat on my girlfriend." Pause. But cuddling wouldn't be out of the question. I was so taken aback and confused that after a brief moment of awkward silence I just picked right back up where I was in my story. I went bouldering with some guys I knew, and one said, "Thanks for wearing such tight clothing so it's easier to picture you naked." Went on a date with a guy who then states he had turned down the Olympics in MMA because of school. Not only is MMA not an Olympic sport, but he wasn't even in shape. Date went horrible. I get to my house and promptly ignore his incessant texts until I can figure out a polite way to turn him down. Next day, he sends me the 50th text of the hour and this one says, "This makes you my girlfriend, right?" No, never. Please no. Edit. He turned down the Olympics for school. He stated he was accepted into Olympics for MMA as the sport. He did not turn down the Olympics for MMA. Edited for clarity. Edit 2. It could help that he had said this during the Winter Olympics. A guy in my class was telling me about all the stuff he recently bought from Target. He then said he got a wine opener, but said it in a seductive way. I awkwardly said, "A wine opener, huh?" And he went back to his smooth voice and said, "Yes, dart to open wine." It's hard to write. You guys just had to be there. It was hella awkward. Much needed edits. 1. I was a sophomore in college and went to a Halloween party dressed as a pretty conservative Pikachu. A guy approached me and asked me if he could squirtle all over me later. This guy was 25, had already graduated, insulted my intelligence when I refused to tell him my GPA, told me he and I would hook up by end of night. I had a BF at the time who was my ash but was out of town for weekend. This was my first Halloween party and he had been harassing other girls the entire night. I thought it was hilarious when my BF referred to my breasts he used as pillows that put him to sleep as jigglypuffs. It's not funny from this other guy. He genuinely wanted to ejaculate on me. He wasn't kidding. Close bracket. 2. I was in a line at the mall once and a guy glanced at my chest and said to me, "Your children will be well nourished and nothing else." He walked away before I got a chance to respond. I went back to my business. A guy on Tinder once asked me to sing to his edit. I didn't do it. Guys, never met up with him. Guess I'm just too ashamed of my singing ability. You know, you'd do really well in the kind of job where you had to work for tips. Well, this is odd, but maybe he's trying to be nice. Try and defuse the situation with small talk. What, like a waitress? Yeah, I used to do that for a while actually. No, intense staring, where you really had to work for them. Edit, to mention that this was an office co-worker and that I don't know my grammar. I bartend and have had many creepy comments over the years. My two most memorable. 1. A customer who was probably near my father's age asked how much I weigh. Normally I'm pretty quick with these things, but this caught me off guard, so instead of a normal sassy answer I was just slack-jawed and told him probably about 140 pounds. He went on about how he usually only likes girls that are under 120 pounds. But he still found me attractive. Not worded that nicely. Hard pass on that. 2. A customer at the bar was making generic conversation and then went down a dark path. He told me he was a geneticist and that I should have his children because I was an ideal mate. He got more and more aggressive, inquiring as to my reproductive plans and demanding I make up my mind. He was physically removed from the premises and told not to come back. This is all on mobile. Apologies for any typos. This wasn't me but my very good friend. She went on a terrible online date, and his crowning moment was at the end of dinner when he announces, "You know, if it wasn't for my ADD medication I'd have a huge boner right now." She left very soon after. Kind of a compilation. I have fallen for the "I'm going to kill myself. Can you come talk to me?" thing 3 times. It's ridiculous. The first guy was so committed to it that he started crying, and then put his hand down my pants. Now whenever a man tells me that, one of the first things I do is inform them that it's my duty to get them medical help if they are being honest. It sucks, but goddamn I'm gullible. Edit for clarification. I am not, and was not looking for anyone to be with. Happily married. Also, the reason I mentioned the whole "whenever a man tells me that" is really just because no women have come to me about being suicidal. I could have just said person. I just wasn't thinking anything of it. Once a guy said he wanted to duck me in my hitbox. That's a ducking gross way to put it. Thanks for the gold. Edit 2. Okay guys, I am the only one in the Midwest who has never heard of a car referred to as a hitbox. You guys all have. We've made that clear now. Edit. He was not referring to my car, as we live in the US and until last night, I'd never heard of that delightful euphemism. Also, I'd give out an award for the 100th person to comment "tongue punch your fart box," but we're far surpassed that by now. Merry Christmas, everyone. From one hitbox to another. I tried dating your sister once so I could get close to your mom. I'm not even sure why he told me this, we're not even relatively good friends. Edit. I've just realized, not only was my sister taken at the time, but we're twins. I can't help but feel slightly weirdly offended. Edit 2. For duck's sakes guys, you know what I meant in the first edit. It's 3:30 in the morning. Give me a break. My downstairs roommate and I were friendly but never hung out. He was rarely at home because he was in the military, like the equivalent of a Marine or something. A super fit guy. We both got drunk one night. Not together and not with intentions to hang together. I think it might have been during our city's festival. Actually, when everyone gets wasted. Anyway, the night ended with me freaked out upstairs in the corner of my room while he was stumbling around the shared laundry room and knocking on the weak ass wooden door to my part of the house while repeatedly yelling, "Come down here. I won't abuse you. I promise. Just come down here for a minute. I'm not going to abuse you." I kind of have a dad vibe going, and lots of girls are really into the ducked up ones anyway, and those are the fun ones. No thank you. Not the girl but the guy in this situation. I just received a blowjob from an ex I was trying to get back together with. After said blowjob, I say wow, someone's been practicing. Instant regret. Guy 1, your hair is prettier than your face. Guy 2, you are the gap between my ballsack and my anus. You hold me together. Without you, my insides would fall out. I needed to get a form out of our manager's desk, which he was sitting at and wouldn't move. So I went around him and was stuck between him and the wall. Then he said, looks like you were stuck between a rock and me. I noped the hell out of there as fast as I could. Beat red. Speaking as a guy here, my crush in high school invited me over after school to help her with her homework. I thought she was being sexual about it, hormones, and straight up blurted out your parents wouldn't mind if I slept over? This was in front of her friends and needless to say, I did not come over that day to help her with her homework. The summer after I graduated high school, I got a friend request from this guy who was a couple grades below me with whom I had a few mutual friends, so I accepted. No big deal. He messaged me almost immediately and we would talk every so often. He'd compliment me a lot and stuff, but I wasn't attracted to him at all, so I would try to veer the conversation away from anything of that nature. So one day, out of the blue, he messages me asking if he could ask me an awkward question. I say something along the lines of sure, why not? Thinking that the worst case scenario was that he'd ask me out and I'd have to politely decline. He proceeds to ask me if it'd be alright if he masturbated to my Facebook pictures. I didn't even have like 60 pictures. Just the run-of-the-mill duck face selfies and pictures with friends. So at this point, I'm totally caught off guard and was like sure? Because I had no idea what to say. I mean, what do you even say to that? And then, he had the audacity to ask, do you mind if I go to it right now? Long story short, I blocked him on Facebook and for a while he would try to find me on different sites and eventually acquired my number somehow. It only stopped when my friend pretended to be my boyfriend and told him to back off. TLDR. If you're going to jack off to my Facebook pictures, please don't ask for permission and definitely don't tell me when you're doing it. I really don't want to know. Your tits are great, but you could work on your personality, followed by I think I'm in love with you, followed by why are you playing hard to get, followed by have you ever wanted to murder someone for not liking you back? Okay, I'm late to this thread but I will share anyways. So when I was 18 I worked at this Boy Scout camp. I was one of the first Asian females ever on staff, and the staff was primarily white. Anyways, this one white guy gets my number from his friend and starts texting me. Out of nowhere he tells me he has yellow fever. Being the naive 18-year-old I was like, oh man, you should probably get that checked out. He goes on and on trying to be smooth and me clueless. I am looking at WebMD on my phone to find out about yellow fever and the symptoms. I text him again he should see a doctor right away and that he should drink fluids. He then explains to me that he has a thing for Asians. It was very awkward after that. You got a fetus in you? Followed by, damn, congrats. My sophomore year in high school I was walking into class and one of the students already sitting down asked me as I was walking to my desk, let me into your soul. What would you do if you had a D? I never had a real back and forth conversation with this guy before he asked me this. Didn't realize that he wanted to know what I'd potentially do to his D until he texted me days later asking me to duck. Dear Lord, here we go. I was at Starbucks with some friends and this guy, age 19, who is socially awkward, joined us. Everything was fine, but the conversation was lagging a bit. So this guy suddenly pipes up asking if any of us ever had something we lied about when we were younger. We all said yes, and he launches into this cringe story. He tells us that when he was 5, that he convinced his parents he was potty trained by dumping the id out of his diaper and into the toilet and asking them to come look at it in the bowl. It wasn't until later that he actually became potty trained and told his parents his trick. The three of us at the table just tried to ignore that story was ever left his mind. One just buried her head in her hands. The other was fake texting, and I stared at the ceiling. To this day, it's the most awkward thing I've ever been told. TLDR. Socially awkward guy admits he wasn't potty trained at 5 and used to dump his diaper in the toilet to make his parents think he was. Edit. People are saying this is a hilarious story and that I should have laughed. If it was someone I knew well, a friend, then I would have found it funny. However, coming from someone I hardly knew at such a random time, with no hint of humor in his voice, it was awkward. 1. I had a date with a guy that was set up by friends. Minutes after we ordered food he rubbed his thighs and told me that he loves ducking fat chicks because they have fat pussies. He said ducking thin girls is like throwing a wiener down a hallway. I waddled my fat ass right the duck out of that restaurant. 2. I had a man come up to me and tell me that I needed to wear a better bra because my girls were all over the place. I was walking on the seawall in Vancouver and wearing a sports bra. He then said that he could tell me things like this because he was gay and it is his duty to reprimand women that don't dress right. He tried to hug me. I was in the middle of setting up for my final at college and a guy who had been harassing me all semester came in and wouldn't stop talking to me and asked for my number, all while my teacher was standing there awkwardly. He was ignoring my wishes to be left alone and asking him to leave until I gave him my number. I finally gave him a fake one which he asked, "Can you repeat that number to me? I usually get fake ones." Not a girl, but a friend of mine, with very large boobs, once was approached by a guy at a party. He said while staring at her boobs, "I'm a mammal," and left. His OkCupid opener was, "I'll tie you up and duck you all over my house, even where I keep the dog food." To make matters worse, his next message proceeded to blame the message on his roommate who had his phone last night. Edit. To clarify, the guy continued to solicit a one-night stand after this exchange, hence why I doubt his roommate explanation. When I was very pregnant I was playing pool with my boyfriend and some of his friends. It was my turn and I was bending over to take my shot and their one weird friends was behind and said, "Yeah, cut that pussy open." No idea what it meant but it creeped me and everyone else the duck out. I lightly turned down a guy who was hitting on me because I had a boyfriend. He proceeded to ask me if I showered for my boyfriend. Okay, I'm a guy but I know for a fact I've done some really awkward it. Once I was walking down the hall and a girl looks at me and says, "Hey, you bad customer service, you have really big feet." To which I then replied, "The only one to ever say that to me before was my mom." I continued walking and didn't look back. "You look like my first baby mama." I went on a date with this guy who I didn't really have anything in common with but thought I'd give him a shot anyways. We met up at a bar and he had already pounded 2 pitchers of beer but was completely sober, at least from what I could tell. We hung out, talked, and it was confirmed that I really had no interest in him. I wanted to leave but he convinced me to go to another bar to get one last drink. Seeing as it was only about 8 PM I agreed to one more drink. We were sitting at the bar and a couple was making out next to us. He looked at me and asked what I thought people in the bar would do if he and I started making out. I knew where this was going as he tried to laugh and make some joke about no one paying attention. He then insisted that we should MacLeod. I nervously laughed and told him that wasn't a very good idea and excused myself to the restroom. I came back to the seat and he had a shot waiting for me and insisted I drink it. No shot for him, just me. I declined and he got really upset and said he was ready to go. At that point in the evening he had consumed 2 pitchers of beer, 4 margaritas, and 2 more pints yet displayed no sign of being intoxicated. Nonetheless, I knew there was a lot of alcohol in his system and asked if he thought it was a good idea for him to drive. He got defensive and said he was fine. We exited the bar and he told me to have a good night. He took off in the opposite direction, didn't even walk me to my car. When I got home I texted him just to make sure he was okay. His response? "I only date girls I duck on the first date." He said a lot of awkward things that night but that last line definitely took the cake. Not me, but I was with my female co-worker when a customer told her, "You have a really nice turd cutter." A guy friend was stroking my arm at a bar. I was drunk and didn't mind cause it kinda felt nice, even though it seemed weird. After some time, he gets a quizzical look and says, "Whoa, your skin is so soft, despite the muscles underneath. You have very nice muscles, just tender enough." If we were ever in one of those situations where we had to resort to cannibalism to survive, I'd definitely eat you first. I might not even wait until it became necessary for survival. I might just eat you first anyway. Edit for clarity. The plane one happened at the beginning of the flight which, to me, I guess not to others, made the rest of the 5 hours hella awkward. While I passed off his question as a joke, I'm not sure it worked, so God knows it was awkward for both of us. If you want to ask someone out, have an exit plan for everyone involved. Dude from the first 2 bullets was sweet AF, but could not read a room. Freshman in college. Someone I met a week earlier ends up next to me on my flight. Dude, hi. So are you dating anyone right now? Me. No. Dude, me neither. We should go out. Me. Haha, good joke. Puts earphones in. Silence for rest of flight. Also in college. Dude, hey. I found out you're going to be my RA. Why don't we break some of those no fraternization rules? Months later. Dude, how come I found out you're dating through Facebook? Keeping secrets. A. On train ride to airport. Sophomore year in college. Stranger dude. Sits next to me. Can I have your number? I'm divorced but I'm going to school and I don't remember anything after this. 1 year later. I'm walking in the city to a tutoring job when across the street. Stranger dude. Hey. The lychee. Remember me? I don't know what was more awkward. A 40-year-old telling me about his divorce for an hour. Or a 40-year-old who told me about his divorce remembering me a year later after no other contact, to my knowledge. This was a friend of mine. We were at a concert together, and some guys came over afterwards. They were pretty drunk, and one in particular kept hitting on her. She tried to ignore it but he was persistent. Eventually he asked her if she'd like to come back to his place, to which she explained, I have a boyfriend. His name is Frank. Without missing a beat, he said, then can I be frank with you? Cause you're smoking. Didn't work, but we had a great laugh. I am going to Guy Fieri at Chipotle storm up your beehole. I was in a CVS one time, picking up some tampons and casually grabbing any other essentials. As I was strolling through the candy aisle, a man in his maybe late 50s looks at the tampons and says, oh, you enjoy sticking things in yak? I pretended I didn't hear him so he just repeats it very loudly. I paid and got out of there ASAP. Old dude creeped me out.